at the time that hardcore was really happening, there was all these bands, and most of them were made up of kids that were in high school or in the early years of college, and so all these bands would start touring in the summer. So you'd have all these bands crisscrossing the country in the summer, and as a result, we'd have some big bands that might bring a couple bands with them, and then we'd have some other guys that would like call and say, hey, we heard these guys are playing here, and then can we get on the bill?
That was probably like 1984, 83 maybe.
I opened my first store in 86, and I think he might have opened in 85.
My first show was Suicidal Tendencies. I think it was like 86. I talked my mom into taking me.
Late 80s.
88.
I believe it was 1989.
91 or 92.
Oh, yeah.
About 92, 93 was when I started going to shows.
No, 95 to 2000.
And when I was probably 9 or 10 years old, I went and saw them at the Speedway Cafe.
Right before high school.
When I was a sophomore.
I think I was a sophomore in high school.
Probably a freshman in high school. And I went to Highland High, and I really didn't like it very much, so I tried not to be there as much as possible. And I was fucking 15. I was probably 15 years old.
It was a really good experience for me.
That really fucking changed my life, like in a dramatic way.
These are my friends, this is the music we like to go to shows.
Actually, there was a really good friend of mine at the time. Her name was Sunshine, and she used to come home all the time. I think I was in like 8th grade, and she would tell me about all these local shows and all these great bands that were playing at the time, and just how much fun she had. And so we started going.
The local bands back then were sometimes a bigger draw than the national acts. So, and a lot of times the national acts would put these bands on their shows so that kids would actually be there when they came through town.
It was still at the time when national old school punk acts were still touring, and they would play with all our local talent.
In my mind, it was great, you know, just because there were so many good bands coming through town, and Raunch was booming, you know, it was a cool store where you could go in, and if Brad didn't have it, he would get it for you, and he was totally into it.
When I moved here, there wasn't anywhere to buy any music at all, except for at Raunch.
Raunch probably every week, and just hung out and chatted with Brad. And
I had a practice space actually above Raunch, and Brad wouldn't let us play before 7 because he said that we were too loud. That means he has to turn his music up.
And so I'd go down into Sugar House and Raunch Records and the heavy metal shop.
That was a cool thing back then. I mean, everybody would come down to the stores to check out the new stuff.
The first time I ever went to Raunch, when it was on 4th Street, was actually with my mom.
I remember my mom would actually take us and drop us off, and then we would go find a payphone after, and she would come pick us up because we were too young to drive. My earliest memories, I think, are standing around Raunch Records.
Well, there was the Speedway Cafe, was like pulling in, you know, 100 people or so for 2 shows a week maybe.
Speedway or the Pompadour or the Word or whatever.
And the Painted Word shows every other night with random people and stuff.
The shows out here were, you know, would average anywhere from 200 to 300 kids, which was huge at that time.
We used to work at the Painted Word back in '89 when J.R. Rupel operated that.
Painted Word, the Speedway. When I first started going to shows, it was like at the Indian Center and Alice's, yeah.
Kids were doing shows in basements, vets halls, renting out just various places, anywhere you could find to put on a show.
I mean, you're under the freeway in this seedy little club with the most despicable looking characters you can think of, but I never felt scared. Alongside total, like, straight-laced looking preppy guys. It was crazy, you know, but they were all in the same room. It was great.
My absolute favorite place to be in the entire world was at shows.
We were so packed in there, and the whole floor was a mosh pit. People were coming out with just blood, and they're like, I got kicked in the head by so-and-so or whatever, you know, and they were like baptized and born again or whatever. They loved it, you know.
It was fun. We did tons of shows, had all these bands from all over the country come.
So much of Salt Lake City's scene is owed to Brad Collins and to JR.
You know, Brad, JR, Natalie, those are 3 of the main people that really inspired and worked, you know, to make this scene happen for all of us. So
I'd like to think so in a way, but at the same time, I think that it would have perpetuated itself eventually anyway. I mean, there's just no way that people can sit under a rock for any real length of time, you know? I mean, if something's happening worldwide, then I think even here in Salt Lake, we can pick up on that periodically.
I don't know if it was me or just everybody was ready for what happened. Kind of all came together. I mean, everybody worked together.
He told me once that to make a scene, you have to make a magazine. And everybody will follow the magazine after that.
I think I started it in December of '88 or '87, I don't remember, and ran it for about 6 or 7 years. And then when Nirvana broke, I was out. Like, fuck this, man. You can read about it in Rolling Stone. So I just quit. And then a friend of mine bought the paper.
Why? I had nothing else to do. I was bored.
I think it was 1979 when Brad Collins first went on air, went on KRCL and played the Ramones and all of the New York City punk that Salt Lake had never heard before. And because of that, he literally started the Salt Lake City music scene.
The local bands, we got to play with Discharge and GBH and DOA and Black Flag. I mean, you name it, we got to play with all those guys, and it was because of Brad. It wouldn't have happened here if it really wasn't for Brad. Brad is the father of our scene.
he's kind of the kingpin of this whole scene, and he really taught a lot of us how to do it, what to do. He inspired us, he motivated us. His radio show that he was doing for years and years, I remember when I was 12 years old, tape recording that show because that's what I had back then. And just so that I could hear this new music that he was playing. Nobody had ever heard of punk rock out here, as far as I knew anyways.
First time I'd heard of SLUG was JR came into my shop, and it must have been like maybe the first or second issue.
It kind of just went hand in hand with Raunch, you know? It's like a magazine that correlated with Raunch in a way.
To get the new SLUG every month.
It was newspaper, green slug on it.
And I picked up SLUG, didn't know what it was.
Some secret underground magazine that I thought was so cool.
It was a cool little underground, like inform you about stuff in the scene kind of thing.
The only way to find out about any shows.
You could tell what was going on, what shows are coming up.
You know, run to SLUG first to find out who was playing next. And
Pour over it, you know, read every line, you know, find out what's going on in the scene.
I probably have hundreds of them sitting around my room.
basket that caught everything that was coming out of Salt Lake City or whatever, you know.
It was a really good resource to kind of find out what was going on, because I was just a dumb kid and didn't really have any clue.
It was just super underground, and it was something that attracted me, and I was like, I got to be a part of this, like what's going on here, and pretty much stayed in tune with it from that point on. It was just something that appealed to me.
So it was in, let's see, I got to think of the year. 89?
SLUG's 18th anniversary party. We're reuniting various bands. Your approach to play the SLUG 18th anniversary party to reunite. Your first reaction.
It was a great show. I mean, it was like high school, middle school, college, everything reunion. I mean, I saw people I haven't seen for decades, you know, and people from out of town came in to see the show that I haven't seen in years, and like, you know, and one guy came in from out of town that I hadn't seen in a long time and really like reignited our friendship, and it was just really sweet. It was like a really sweet night to see a lot of the people that I haven't seen forever, you know.
Okay. All right. You feel comfortable? Sure. Whatever you want. This is
I'm glad somebody put this together because it probably would have never happened.
I never
otherwise.
thought in a million years I'd be playing a Clear show.
I'd been out of the music scene for 13 or 14 years. I hadn't played with Iceburn since '93.
There were definite no's from me on every occasion until SLUG asked us.
I think I said cool.
I've been trying to get Jeff to jam forever. We're still good buddies. And
I didn't want to do it. I was incredibly upset that everybody else wanted to do it. When everybody did the reunion, I really, really did not want to do it.
I don't even know why SLUG asked us to get reunited. I mean, we were a pretty good band when we were sober, but that wasn't very often.
It's good, it's fun. It's been really fun. Have you had fun?
I've had a great time.
I've had
fun. It's been awesome.
It took me a lot of practice to get back, to remember a lot of the songs.
Really liked the Stench. We thought Terrence had a natural, innate sense of melody and good timing and great songwriting, and that continues to this day, really.
A lot of the great influential bands from the 70s and 80s were getting together and doing reunion tours, and we thought, why can't we do this on a local level?
Plus all the girls liked them. The girls really thought they were cool, they were cute, and they all wanted to hang out with Terrence and Jeff.
The Stench did pretty much 3 full North American tours. And the first tour, we pretty much got picked up for the whole tour with Verbal Assault from Rhode Island, which is one of the coolest bands in the world. And then our second tour just so happened every night we played with Green Day. And then the third tour we ended up doing another tour with Green Day.
Brad Collins basically told me it was one of those experiences I couldn't miss.
Stench was huge for me. I mean, those were, I have many, many memories of being sweaty in the pit, staring up at Terrence and going, give me the mic, I know the words,
Back at that time, whenever the Stench or the Bad Yodelers would play, that was an event. That was something everybody went to. And
yeah, they were fun to see. They used to play all the good punk rock shows that came through town, and I always would go see them as much as I was as excited to see them as I was the national act that would come through.
Yes, I saw the Stench.
The Stench, the Stench, the Stench.
Well, we're gonna play some Stench.
Yeah!
Give it up for the Stench, everybody.
Seeing the Stench play was definitely a great experience as well. They were definitely a phenomenal band.
It was awesome. The Stench were awesome.
Although he's been this father figure and influenced all these young kids into playing music, you'd never know it when you had a conversation with him.
But that's happened to me so much, Jeremy Chatelaine wrote me at one point and said, you're the whole reason I play music.
Really, the way I learned guitar in the beginning was just standing right up front and just watching their hands, where they were and what they played.
Stench, I think they were way long broken up. Like, they broke up like when I was like 12 or something.
First band I ever saw in my whole life was Iceburn. It was cool. It was when I was a young kid, and it was amazing. It blew my mind.
The Stench and Iceburn, on the other hand, even back then, they had a sound that was more original, bigger, and when they could hold their own against these touring bands that played at the Speedway, you really knew Salt Lake was onto something good.
And then when Iceburn came out, it was just like, blew my mind.
When Iceburn started, they got such a huge following that all of a sudden the music scene was like massive and awesome. I mean, like you'd play a show and there'd be like 800 people there.
Like Iceburn like had a huge influence on me and when like growing up and being hardcore and like when we were all just little kids like trying to be tough.
Fire On was definitely my favorite. I had like the little cassette tape. And
They worked in classical and jazz and like hardcore and metal and all this stuff, and it just was perfect. And with Jeremy singing and the two guitars and Doug Wright's bass playing, it was like blew my mind.
I started a band called Jets of Brazil and did that for a long time. And then most recently, I have a band called Cub Country that I sing and play guitar in. That's my band. And I've spent the last probably year and a half playing bass and Helmet too.
And
Gentry's like a Salt Lake City legend.
Symphonic and classical.
It was a hugely influential band for me.
On the inside, I'm scarred and I'm scarred.
I just used to sit in my room and, play in bands and ape Gentry. I just aped all of his shit. I'd pull my guitar up to my tits and steal all of his shit.
It's cool to have there's aspect of the younger generation and have them hopefully learn from what you've done and be able to kind of take it a step further. I don't know.
Iceburn really proved to a lot of local bands that they could do it. They could break out. If they worked hard enough and stayed together long enough, they could get signed to a national label. They could do national, international tours.
It's funny to hear, I don't know, I used to hear it all the time from Philly, you know, like all these bands would come through and be like, oh, the band they'd ask about was Iceburn, you know, that they saw back in Philly or in Connecticut or something, and so that always feels good. It's like at least made some kind of impact.
Claire really did have what it took to become a national iconic band. They were almost there. They were one of the hardest working bands in Salt Lake at the time, and in the industry for that matter.
Back here with Claire.
Yeah!
Yeah!
It's flattering being put in the same category with them.
No, it's great. That's awesome. Being able to play with the Stench is huge.
To actually have Iceburn play and
that's incredible.
all the other bands is just amazing.
Yeah. Another big reason was you guys said that Iceburn was already said yes, and so I said, well, if they say yes, we can't say no. So yeah, I'd love to do it. I've seen them so many times, and to have the opportunity to be able to actually play with them, I'm not going to pass that up. The old Salt Lake City straight edge scene. It was really fun for a while, and then it just seemed to get more violent.
That was kind of the generation where straight edge started to get a little wild.
You know, apologies, dudes, but you know, I like to drink.
There were a lot of fights outside of the Pompadour too. All those straight edgers. Those straight edge kids, they're trouble.
What it was like to go to Clear shows when they were first out was definitely a lot of fun.
Going to a Clear show was a little dangerous.
And it was positive as well. I didn't want to drink, I didn't want to use drugs, I didn't want to do any of that stuff, and I didn't really feel like I had a place. And so when I met other kids that didn't use those, use substances, and they were having fun, it was nice.
A lot of energy, a lot of kids.
They were doing something that literally Salt Lake had never seen before.
I remember thinking it was different than anything that I'd ever seen before.
More people seem to be looking up to the wrong people, just the few bad seeds, and that just kind of became like the new cool.
Clear historically played all ages venues. They were straight edge bands. It was really important for them to keep up that ethos.
How's it going? This is TK in Club Vegas. This shit, straight razors aren't fucking needed at shows. Hate edgers, keep your fucking weapons at home. Straight edgers, come on down and have a good time.
Hey, once again, thanks SLUG for doing all this shit. None of it would be possible without them. Thanks to Phil White, our good friend, and anyone else that we're not sure of that came out of state to see this show. Greg Bennett is another one. This song's called Deeper Than Blood.
Yeah.
I got really tired of defending it because what people thought it wasn't what I considered straight edge to be, and so it was really conflicting and hard to constantly be answering questions to people about it and fighting for it in a sense.
There were a lot of new kids that were being introduced to it, and they found it, new friends. It was kind of a positive. I think it was positive for them if they didn't want to use drugs or drink.
Their shows always had a ton of energy. Everybody just was really into the music at the time.
Absolutely phenomenal. There was a lot of energy going on around that time.
I feel like it was kind of the break of when it was starting to get big here in Salt Lake.
It's funny, when this whole thing came up, I made bulletins and stuff on MySpace, and I had kids from Sweden and England and all over America like, oh, clear, best hardcore band ever, like, wish I could make it out to the show.
Stage presence they had was unbelievable. I mean, everybody in the band, they all looked like they were about to have a heart attack on stage.
Claire was insane. Like they blew my mind. I didn't know that Tyler could play that fast.
Again, it was one of those almost community sort of feelings. I mean, they had so much power over the crowd, even compared to the bands they were playing with. It was just that a local band could have that much more of an effect on the audience that was seeing it as compared to the touring band they were. To me, it was just amazing.
I thought it was great. I thought it was a good opportunity to sort of celebrate the Salt Lake music culture, and great opportunity to play with some bands that we really grew up looking up to, you know.
Thanks a lot to everyone in the city, whoever came to every one of our shows.
They kind of encouraged like some of us who were more well known for like bad behavior to be worse.
There are emergency exits on both sides of the stage.
The Corleones began as a joke, and it ended in much the same way.
We were really good at getting drunk and breaking our equipment. The other stuff not so much.
Fun in a completely different way. Good dirty fun is sort of the good clean fun of Clear.
A lot of alcohol and a lot of violence. Violent band.
They're probably the only band that I ever came close to kicking out of the studio.
I ended up destroying a table, smashing my bass, while Ryan was picking a fight with the other band.
They were like threatening us with knives and stuff in the league.
No, but we'd jump on tables and take drinks and, you know, just be real aggressive towards everybody.
I think there were some razor blades.
They were more about burning stuff, I guess.
A lot of times they were escorted out of the bar by security.
They were offended by it.
Things were getting broken and people were talking over each other and we couldn't mix.
That apparently European authorities thought was a bomb.
Just all about wrecking shit.
Those were good times.
Difficulties. Welcome to the Corleone Show.
And when I first met Ryan Jensen, I thought he was out of his mind. And then I heard him sing and I realized, like, he's brilliant.
5, 6, 7, 8.
The guys that really liked what I did, it's really cool that they did it, but you know, those people are mostly people that did stuff on their own too. They didn't just sit there and wait for things to happen. They actually went out and made something.
What I've noticed is that like a lot of the people that are in the bands now that were starting bands back when we were 17, 18, and they're still playing music.
It's important not to forget these people and their blood, sweat, and tears that they put into Salt Lake, and really made it what it is now, which is a thriving, passionate local music scene.
It is what it is, and it's still going.
Salt Lake City is just the right size to have a great, flourishing culture, but still be accessible to everyone that wants to get to it.
Music scene's huge here. We have a venue at Addicted, and I'm booked out already a month and a half for local bands, and there's so many bands downtown.
People in Salt Lake take their rebellion seriously.
So in a way, it's really cool that way. I mean, people that are into creating right now have an opportunity that they haven't had in the past because there's all this creative juice flowing here.
We wanted to create an event that would inspire people, inspire the younger generation that never saw these bands, inspire them to go out and create their own scene.
It's just so much fun for my kids. You know, they were pretty psyched. They got some cool pictures, and you know, they've got some good stories. And my nephew, a couple of my nephews were there, and I don't know, maybe they're changed. So it was fun.